Hi, Jessica.
How's it going?
Really well, thank you.
Hey, Drag. Hey, Jessica.
Hey, Brad. I think Joe's out tonight, so just waiting for Luke and think we'll be ready to go.
Luke's here, he's signing in.
Hello,
Hi, Bonnie.
how are you all?
Very well, thank you.
Council, we will call this meeting to order. For the record, it is Tuesday, March 2nd at 4:32 p.m. We will begin this afternoon's work session with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Cavanagh.
Here.
Councilwoman Perot.
Here.
Councilwoman Strader.
Here.
Councilman Hoagland.
Here.
Councilman Burnt.
Here.
Mayor Simison.
Here. Next item is adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move adoption of the agenda as published.
Second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as published. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next item is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move that we approve the consent agenda and for the mayor to sign and clerk to attest.
Second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to and the consent agenda is passed. There are no items moved from the consent agenda. So we will go into item 21, which is our department commission reports, and we will hear from our Arts Commission annual report. And I will turn this over to Bonnie.
Hello, Mayor and council members. And I'm thinking you can see the beginning of our annual report for the Meridian Arts Commission. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so the Meridian Arts Commission operates with their mission statement, which is to develop, advance, and nurture all facets of the arts, to enhance the quality of life for Meridian residents and their visitors. So we're a commission of 8 serving 3-year terms with 1 youth commissioner serving 1-year term, an ex officio of the city government, and the arts and culture coordinator. So next slide. So we operate in 2020 with 3 different subcommittees. The first one is the Public Arts Subcommittee, the Events and Outreach Subcommittee, and the Initial Point Gallery Subcommittee. So next slide. The purpose of the Public Arts Subcommittee is to identify and develop public artwork in Meridian. And it's through the MAPS resolution that MAC receives $50,000 annually. And the Public Arts Commission is tasked with identifying and developing public art projects that effectively use this funding to expand the collection of the public art throughout the city. Next slide. So in 2019, there were 3 different works of art that were proposed and approved on, and those were installed then in 2020. One of them being the bronze at Fire Station number 6, and then 2 individual arts sculptures in the 2 different city parks, one at Champions Park and one at Renaissance Park. Next slide. The other thing that this subcommittee takes care of is our traffic box series. So in 2020, there were 10 new wraps installed. 5 of those were chosen from local artists and funded by the MAPS program. And 5 wraps were selected from the West Ada School District Student Art Show, and those were funded by MDC. So the public art plan, we were tasked with a goal to develop a public art plan that would help guide the selection and installation of future public art pieces in Meridian. So a partnership was developed with Via Partnerships Public Art Consultant. They put together a questionnaire that was distributed to all Meridian residents. And I believe we received nearly 300 questionnaires back. They also spoke to city employees and community leaders on the arts development possibilities. And they provided a workshop for the Meridian Art Commissioners in organizing and developing a public art plan. So what's next? ZMAC will hold a facilitated workshop following up on that, and that will happen in March, the end of March of this year. The next thing that this committee has taken care of is initiating the mural series project. So the goal is to have 3 new murals for Meridian, the first murals of the city's collection. So last year, there was the call out to artists and to businesses to home these different murals. 3 different businesses were selected. One of them was the Boise Co-op at the Villages. The other were located in the near and downtown area at Sage Point Financial and the Meridian Cycle. So 3 artists, different artists or art groups have been selected, and those projects are expected to be completed in late summer, early fall of 2021. The Events and Outreach Subcommittee, their purpose is to provide events and activities that engage Meridian residents in the visual and performing arts in a family-friendly setting. So this committee was met with some big challenges because these were all social events that have been planned. One of them, which is the concert series, that was shuttered until 2021. And those artists that were selected for the 2020 series concerts were now going to be doing the concerts in 2021. So a major event that the Events and Outreach Committee takes care of is Meridian Art Week. And those events they happened last year, but they were had a little bit different take on it because of the pandemic. The art drop went on as before, and that's where artists developed little pieces of art and gently hid their art pieces around downtown, and people could find those and claim them as their own. The chalk art competition took on a little different look. Rather than having artists congregate in the downtown area and painting on city sidewalks, they instead painted on their driveways and sidewalks of their homes and their individual neighborhoods, and then shared their art on social media. And since it was a competition, it was then judged by the photos that were submitted. And new this past year were the art workshops that happened with social distancing, et cetera. And there were 13 classes offered: a paint night, acting and improv, dance, hand drums, writing, and floral design. And then because the art drop has been so successful, the committee decided to take a spin-off of that for the holidays and do an art drop, an ornament drop, in December of last year. And that was a big hit. It appealed to a wide audience, brought people downtown, and these ornaments were gently hidden and hung on trees and bushes, etc., and people could find them and claim them for their own. So I think what's next with that is that it's going to happen again. And the Initial Point Gallery Committee, the purpose of this committee is to provide a fine art gallery space for the showcase of visual art, both 2 and 3D, for the Meridian students of the West Ada School District, as well as local and regional artists, both emerging and professional in their level of expertise. So again, this was another area that got hit with and needed some changes with the pandemic. Typically we schedule 12 one-month-long shows throughout the year. And this year, 8 of those shows were able to be done. And within those shows, there were 98 artists that showed their works. So and then last year, of course, we select a year in advance for our next year's exhibit schedule. And interestingly, we had double the average number of applicants for the 21 calendar year. We did do something a little different, and that is that we've established a continual call to artists, and then with notices as to when we'll be doing the selection. So if somebody wants to apply for the following year, they know that they need to get their application done. So what's next for MAC in 2021? The design the design of public art installations for the 10-mile trailhead area, to complete the public art plan, the Concerts on Broadway series to resume, Meridian Art Week, the holiday ornament drop, and to have 12 initial point gallery exhibitions. And I do want to add that the artists whose gallery shows did not happen last year, they were absorbed into the schedule for the 2021 exhibit. And we do, with the gallery, we also like to have at least 3 to 5 artists showing in one show, or a group show such as the Treasure Valley Art Alliance, just to really beef up the variety and the number of artists that are showing, to hopefully reach a broader viewing audience. So with that said, I always want to remind everybody that the art isn't just for beauty and beautification of our city, even though that's so very important. But it also is important to know that it connects businesses to the arts, both visual and performing. And it's a very much integral part of our economy. So if you look at our state statistics, the arts and cultural productions add about $2 billion to the state economy, which is about 2.8% of the Idaho economy that can be traced back to the arts and culture. On a national level, it contributes like $877 billion, or about 4.3% to the national GDP. The arts and culture also supports nearly 21,000 jobs in Idaho. And if you look at the people that attend art events, about 58% of Idaho adults attend live music, theater, or dance performances in the state, and an additional 37% of the adults attend art exhibits. So this information was compiled with data that's published on the National Endowment for the Arts website and arts.gov, and based on 2017 findings and some before that. So we do know that, of course, that the economic impact of last year has significantly impacted artists, especially from the performing standpoint. So with that said, I want to thank the council members and the mayor for your continued support of the Meridian Arts Commission. And I guess that's it. Thanks for having me come and give you our annual report.
Thank you, Bonnie. And I think it'd be important. Bonnie's the new chair of MAC this year. We haven't had a lot of chairs over the year. They tend to stay on for quite a long time. So I guess, Bonnie, you've signed up for multiple years in that role. So congratulations. The one question I had, and I didn't see it on the plans for 2021, but what is the plans in 2021 on the murals? Is there any planned activity for that, or is that a 2022 project?
Well, I think it's going to be a 2022 project. Just I'm not on that committee, so I'm only going to say that from what I understand, because we'll be putting those first 3 murals up. There very well could be a plan to go forward with more. I mean that was my understanding, is that this is the first 3 mural.
It wasn't listed on your 2021 list of what's ahead, so that's why I didn't know if the plan was to do those murals in 21, or
I don't know. It was Jessica Peters. I'm not sure if she's attending the meeting this afternoon or not. She is the chair for that committee.
Audrey's here
Yeah.
as well, so
Mr. Mayor and Bonnie, yes, the murals, it missed the list of what's next in 2021. The murals will be completed around August or September of 2021.
okay.
And I think the question was, are we going to be doing more murals?
No, I was looking at just this year because they weren't listed on your what's next in 2021 on the MAC list. So
Oh.
that's just looking to see if I thought was what my understanding was, but I didn't know if I was misunderstood. So
Oh, right. Yes, I think I mentioned earlier, maybe I only thought this, but the fact that they were selected in 2020, but they would be completed in late summer of 21.
Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burnt.
Chairman Griffith, thank you for coming this evening, and thank you for your presentation. It was well thought out and well prepared. Thank you so much. One thing that I wanted to touch on were these murals as well. I really like these murals. I think they're a fantastic addition to our city. I especially like these murals when they're downtown.
Yes, thank you.
That's where they need to be. I like the murals over at the co-op. It's just not the same when these murals are downtown Meridian. So if you could maybe forward a message to the subcommittee and let them focus those murals on downtown Meridian at where they can be and as possible, that would be great.
Thank you very much for that input. And yes, I will do that.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Bonnie, thanks again for the report. And thanks to the committee. And I know Councilmember Borton's not here, but appreciate his role as an ex officio in supporting your work. Bonnie, I'm just curious if you could give council a flavor for the amount of time you and your fellow commissioners put into your role on a weekly or a monthly basis. I know that it's not that you just show up at a meeting and run off to the races, but you guys are putting some significant time to be prepared. I was hoping you might share some of that with us.
Well, from I think Audrey probably has the statistics for that. But I'll tell you, there's certain times of the year that we're busier than others. But I would say that there's probably an average of anywhere from 5 to 8 hours extra besides committee meetings that commissioners spend time working on projects and research, et cetera.
Mr. Mayor.
Mayor and
Councilman Cavanagh.
Audrey, do you have anything else? Can you add to that?
yeah, I was just going to mention that I collect the volunteer hours from the commissioners each month, and the average is usually around 30 hours for the whole commission each month.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Bonnie, you touched on this, and I wanted to commend you and the commission. Your pivot with the holiday art drop this year, big fans in the Cavanagh household. I know lots of folks in our community really appreciate it. So I wanted to thank you and just really appreciate how the commission pivoted in light of COVID, and your report really captures a lot of that. I am curious, though, there has been some conversation at the legislature about impacting public art and arts commissions and local jurisdictions' abilities to approve art projects or put it out to the vote of the people. And I'm curious if you or your fellow commissioners have discussed that and if you have an opinion one way or another.
Great point.
It actually hasn't been discussed because I think that the proposal just was made last week. I'm thinking like Wednesday, maybe. So we don't have a commissioners meeting until the 11th of March. And I mean, I certainly know that there are some of the commissioners that are well aware of this now, and that does have a significant impact. And I'll tell you why is because the public art that is put out, whether it's some sort of a structure, a bronze, metalwork, whatever, when if you look at $30,000, that's definitely that's a very low end amount for that type of work. So personally, I'm going to be championing my fellow artisans to write letters to their legislators if this passes committee.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Bonnie, thanks. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I know I've I've wrestled with, some of our public art decisions in the past, but I wholeheartedly believe so much in the commission and the voice that you bring to our city that I worry so much if other folks, particularly down at the State House, are trying to mess with the great work that you're doing, and you touched on that in your report. So I know many council members are supportive of you and the commission and aren't supportive of that potential legislation. And I'm happy to hear that you and your colleagues will be voicing even individually your opinions on that.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know Councilmember Burnt touched on maybe some preferences around murals. I appreciate hearing that. My one suggestion might be is as you are looking at potential art projects for Meridian over the next year and future years, that maybe we find an opportunity to find some art that really showcases the unity that I think is sometimes lacking in our community and in our country. I think clearly we've been stretched over the past year, and any opportunity that we have at public art to try and bring our communities together is something that I would really love to see over the next year. So one person's opinion, but just wanted to pass that along. And again, thank you, and thanks to the commission for all your great work.
Yeah, well, thank you. And, anytime anybody wants to visit about ideas for art, I'm always open to hearing that. I'm a phone call away.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Pro.
I really appreciate Councilman Kavner's idea about that. I think that's a fantastic idea. I'm curious, Councilman Kavner, are you thinking in lines of community within our valley, like something that focuses on Treasure Valley as a whole, not just each individual city? Or are you thinking more along the lines of cultural and racial unity, or?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Appreciate the question, council member. It's a fair question. I think it's both. And ultimately, if you've seen any of my doodles in a council meeting, you know that I'm not qualified to be an artist by any way, shape, or form. I just think that there's some themes there that, we have done a really good job as a commission to kind of responding to the themes and values of our community. I look at kind of the Heroes Walk that we have over at Heroes Park as really being responsive to celebrating both local and national heroes. And so I think there's some opportunity there. Again, if that's the direction the commission goes, great. If not, there's not going to be any disappointment on my end. It was just more to plant a seed for the conversation.
I appreciate that. And Audrey, we do have a new committee that's beginning. The acronym is AIM. Can you tell me exactly what that stands for?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members, this is along the lines of another effort the Arts Commission is putting forward. We created a subcommittee called the Arts Inclusivity Meridian, or AIM. And the purpose is to evaluate our efforts on how we can include all people in our efforts, whether it's our events and activities or our calls to artists, how we can include as many people as we can. And it's a unification effort, definitely. So we don't have any set actions yet. It's more talking about goals and potential ideas. So we're hoping to, in the next year or so, come up with more actionable items, whether you see that in the artwork we put out or the events, things like that.
Thank you, Audrey. Council, any further questions? All right. Thank you very much, Bonnie. Appreciate it very much. And look forward to seeing you again real soon.
Okay, thank you so much for the invite to do the report, and you all have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll move on to item 22, which is our Historic Preservation Commission annual report. So look forward to you topping that report and turn this over. I don't know if it's going to be, looks like it's going to be the duo. I'll officially turn it over to Blaine.
As I break stuff. We're unqualified to do this. We don't have any power to. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for this opportunity to talk to you this afternoon about our annual report. Josh and I are the face of HPC. You see us a lot, but without our other commissioners, Neri, Lusigan, Alt, Hart, our youth commissioner Fitzgerald, and our councilperson Jessica Perot, we couldn't get done what we do. So I want to shout out to our commission members for everything that they do. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to El Segundo.
Yeah, my esteemed colleague, thank you, Mayor, City Council members, those of you watching online. It's a really fun commission. It's amazing to me to see how much energy we get out of our group every single month when we're tackling something like history. In this last year, one of the big initiatives that we took on was expanding our virtual tours that we're offering online. So historically, we worked with Whole Film to create these virtual tours. It started out with the Pine Street School, being able to navigate through those 3D panoramic videos to go in, touch objects, click on pictures, and learn about the Pine Street School. This last year, we actually went back to Hull, had them do the Meridian City Hall and Creamery, as well as the Meridian Speedway. So now that we have this platform in place, we're going to be looking to expand that to sites every single year where we can have this kind of rich experience. So even though Hull is doing the work of stitching these together and taking these photographs and producing these products, our commissioners are the ones that are scouring the archives and finding those interesting photos and stories and everything that get put up there. And that's a lot of the work that our staff does. Blaine and I don't spend a lot of time down there. So some of the people that you don't get to see are living down in the basement and doing that hard work for us so we can look good. We did include a link in here to that project again in the materials if you'd like to go view that. National Registry. So Blaine and I were talking about this before we got here tonight. In the 10 years that Blaine's been on the Historic Preservation Commission, and certainly in my 6 years, we had never submitted anything actually to the National Registry. So under our tenure. So we're pretty excited that we're now going to have 2 of those submissions in the last 2 years. So last year we got a $2,000 grant to do the Meridian Speedway and what's called a reconnaissance survey. We briefed you guys on that last month. So we completed that survey. TAG Historical Research did that work for that intensive survey. And we actually just got the information back from SHPO on that. So what we wanted to share with you is there were a couple items that SHPO additionally wanted. So that's the State Historic Preservation Office. So TAG is working with SHPO right now to get those last few details nailed down so that SHPO would be willing to submit that and approve that submittal to the National Registry. What that's additionally opened up for us though is we're looking at, well, I guess before I go on, is that we just won a $5,000 grant for this year to continue the work for Meridian Speedway, but to also add another site. So we're working on that site right now. We're kind of in the initial stages of assessing that, going to meet with the owners and have another site. Those things happen, I think, in what, 50-year increments?
Mm-hmm.
So they have to be at least 50 years old. And what we're finding as a commission is that we have lots of buildings that we don't historically think about being that old that are now. So the Masonic Lodge, things like that are real fixtures that we've got an opportunity to be more active as a commission to get these things recognized. So we're pretty excited about that. May is our preservation month, so we do a lot of activities. So this last year we had to go virtual. So with a shutdown that we all got to experience, we did a lot of work posting things via Facebook. We actually, there's a strong community group that's run by one of our former councilmen or commissioners that Robert Mortensen, that he manages, which is a Meridian history page on Facebook. So we really activated on Robert's page and we're providing materials. And if you've got a chance to be out there, it's fantastic. Lots of engagement. A lot of, I'm trying to track down this piece of history, that piece of history. Does somebody have a picture of this storefront? And when you get the community involved, I think one of the things that we've learned kind of through COVID and the pandemic is social media is a pretty powerful tool, and we can get a lot of information. When you engage the community, it gets to be pretty exciting. So one of the things that we're doing for this year in kind of preparation for for Preservation Month is one of our commissioners, JC, built an entire online scavenger hunt. So it's got a timed out set of posts that are going to happen where people are directed to go find things. And then we are going to be providing prizes to people that finish that scavenger hunt. So again, trying to activate our community and meeting them where they're at to go and experience a lot of the history that exists in Meridian. One of the things we took on last year was our branding. So we had a lot of things that we were using over the years. I think we were very focused on history and not so much what our brand was, but as we were getting more active in social media and active with our messaging, we thought a brand would be important. So you can see this logo here. We wanted to kind of honor the city of Meridian and its year and do something very, very simple. And this was the concept that we came up with that we're using as part of our messaging as a commission at this point. So what's next? What are we going to be doing in 2021? So we did a lot of work in conjunction with the city to basically put together a social media outreach plan. So we think we've got that nailed down where we can kind of, again, meet the city where they're at and use of social media, but do that also under the construct that the city provides us and wanting to honor that and make sure that we're not operating as nefarious characters, of which we are, but we're trying to act less like that. We want to continue our efforts on the Meridian Speedway as well as a new site for this year, and got the grant to be able to do that. We're looking at those additional sites, and I think at this time next year, we're going to be able to share that we've got an additional property ready through the SHPO process and ready to submit to the National Registry. And I think that's exciting on a number of levels because it's giving us, we were trusted with a $2,000 grant. We were able to perform, and I think that kind of success led us to getting a larger grant this year. So I think as we're looking at some of those larger efforts that are interfacing with our state organization, as well as with the national organization, it's just giving us more relevancy in what we're doing as a commission here in Meridian. So with that, we just want to, again, I'll speak for both of us. We just appreciate you guys, like the opportunity to do this. We love it. Like this is, I think we have fun because we're doing something that we all enjoy.
We like.
Yeah, that we really, really enjoy. And you guys have given us great trust, so we appreciate that. So questions?
Thank you, gentlemen. Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
no question, just a comment. Great to see you guys have a good time with this. History is fun. I enjoy it. And we've got some great things in this community to make people take notice of. And it's exciting to see you go out there, take a look at things, what can be under historic preservation and get that attention. So appreciate all that you guys do and the whole group that are involved in that.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Like every year you guys come before us, I'm like, man, HPC can't do any more. They can't accomplish anything more. Like this is the peak. And then every year you come back and you just keep crushing it. And so I get excited every time we get to have you guys on the agenda. I think I asked this question last year, but I want to ask it again. Josh, to your point, you guys kind of got a little bit of bucks and you did some great things. And now you've got other organizations that are wanting to give you more bucks to do more great things. How can the city council support what is just great momentum that's coming from the HPC?
I'll answer. Maybe you want to add on. I think you guys provide us tremendous support. I really do. In fact, when we were wrestling through kind of our social media, which can be a very complex topic, we'd engaged with the mayor's office last week to get some clarity on what should we do, because we want to play inside the boundaries that you provide. What can we do? What can't we do? And the office was super responsive. I think we've come up with a workable solution, that fits inside of what the city wants to do, and then allows us to go out there and do the messaging we want to do. We've been very pleased. More money is not necessarily something like from a resourcing standpoint. We don't need more money. I think our budget's appropriate. We take that pretty serious
We
as a
do.
commission. Like we're very, very tight with the purse strings and making sure that we're not spending money for money's sake. And we're aggressive about going after these grants because we want to be good stewards of city capital and taxpayer dollars. So no, I just think the pat on the back. I mean, every one of you that I see in Old Town Meridian when I'm bouncing around are always super grateful. That means a lot to us. So just gratitude and yeah.
Just a big thank you.
Yeah.
For everything you guys do for us.
Yeah, and definitely if you see our other commissioners, because you get to see us yahoos all the time, but I think if you were to take a moment out of your day to thank some of our other members that aren't in here, because they if you're a historic preservation commissioner, you're very different than arts. Arts people tend to be very outgoing by their nature, so I think that they get fed because of their interactions. The rest of our commission, it really is introverts that love history. And I think it's important that even though they're not gregarious and outgoing, and they are not going to be up here to give you.
Some of us aren't.
Yeah, some of us aren't. That give them a thank you, send them a note. I think that would speak volumes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh, if you want to finish your line.
Thanks again, and please, pass along our thanks to the commission and thanks to Councilmember Perot for serving in that ex officio role. Again, I'm gonna be happy to eat my words next year, but you guys are like the best version of HPC that we've ever had. It's really, really exciting.
Councilman Pearl.
So first of all, let me just say that I have not been the best ex officio member that I could be. All the roles have kept me exceptionally busy, but it's because I trust these guys so much, and they, every time that you come before us, you have such excitement about what you do. And like, who would think that the HPC committee would have the two most exciting, enthusiastic people in our volunteers, and I love it. So thank you, gentlemen, so much. And the entire commission. But also, I want to say every time that you present, I learn something new. And Meridian is a new city relatively. And there's been so much I've learned from you all about the history of Meridian, because, I just don't think of all of Meridian as having this many historic, I just don't think of us as having this history, and you all have been able to find these opportunities and really bring it to the forefront. So appreciate that very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
just a comment, both for the Historic Preservation Commission and the Arts Commission, especially with some of the things you saw come out of the legislature. Just want to express how incredibly important I think both the arts and our work on history are for us. It's all about our identity and our sense of place as a city, and I think it's incredibly important for us. And I think it serves all of us. So thank you very much again for all the work that you're doing.
Well, if it helps, we can see if city council can approve some more buildings, so there'll be more work in 50 years
Yes.
for the next commission members. And if you need it, I can volunteer Councilman Hoagland to walk around, and he can remember everything from when he was 3 to identify as a potential historic property and bring some of that narrative that sometimes is necessary for something to be considered. So he's your council resource.
It's not a bribe, but I'll buy you coffee and we can do that.
Anyways, thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Next item on the agenda is item 23, our police department code enforcement. Continuing our discussion regarding potential ordinances relating to parking in front of mailboxes. So with that, I will turn this over to Lacey to continue our conversation. And unfortunately, we don't have Mr. Borton here, who was the impetus for this conversation, but hopefully we can navigate effectively without him. Lacey.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Lacey Oy, Supervisor Code Enforcement with Meridian Police Department. I'm not nearly as exciting as the last 2 presentations, so at least you had that opportunity. The police department asked me to appear before you on February 16th to present a proposed amendment to the parking code prohibiting parking in front of mailboxes. At that time, you asked me to come back with more information and present it as a department report at this workshop. I'm requesting an additional parking regulation to be added to Meridian City Code 7-2-2B that prohibits parking except momentarily for blocking access to a mailbox. The suggested regulation would prohibit parking within 10 feet of a mailbox during the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on any day that is not Sunday or a federal holiday. The goal of the regulation is to allow reliable, timely delivery by the United States Postal Service, and this section of code for the parking regulation would come with a payable fine of $15. This regulation is being requested after I was contacted by Council President Burnt regarding a citizen asking Councilman Borton why a regulation for parking a vehicle in front of a mailbox did not currently exist in the city of Meridian. The concern was addressed after he had been made aware that some senior citizens were not having mail delivered by the USPS, including the delivery of prescription medications. Per Postal Operation Manual, the United States Postal Service establishes the manner in which each delivery customer receives its mail. If the USPS determines that they are continually unable to deliver mail established by their delivery method, then the USPS can decline to deliver the mail, and customers may be asked to pick up their mail at the post office rather than receiving delivery curbside at their mailbox. The majority of surrounding cities have adopted Idaho State Statute Title 49, Chapter 6, that are just basic rules of road. That outlines the most common parking regulations. This section of Idaho State Statute does not include parking in front of a mailbox and blocking access. The City of Nampa, City of Caldwell, and Kuna have adopted regulations prohibiting parking in front of a mailbox. The City of Nampa's code states parking within 10 feet of a freestanding mailbox or blocking the same from postal vehicle access is prohibited. The City of Caldwell states improperly parked vehicles in front of a mailbox in a manner that prevents the distribution of mail by the U.S. Post Office may be fined $75. Kuna City Code simply states parking is prohibited in front of a mailbox. Some other cities within Idaho have adopted some variant of the parking regulation for blocking, including Coeur d'Alene, Lewiston, Sandpoint, Chubbuck, and Mountain Home. Did they receive that?
They don't see anything. Is there something supposed to be on
No.
the screen?
I had done the attachment with the other city codes.
Okay, that's been in their packet. I didn't know you wanted it displayed.
No,
You-
I didn't
Okay.
want it. That's fine. I just didn't know where it would be. I'm new, sorry. So I did include this in the different writings of the different cities. And really, we just came to the consensus of what we felt would be right for our city. Because the city of Meridian doesn't currently have a regulation making parking in front of a mailbox a violation, there's no mechanism available to track our complaints for this issue. My opinion is we probably receive 1 to 2 calls a month asking for enforcement of this type. Calls are also fielded and dismissed by Ada County Dispatch. I do believe if this regulation is codified, our calls for service will increase, as we currently have educated our residents, homeowners associations, dispatch, and the USPS that we are unable to enforce this parking issue. Our common practice for enforcement of parking violations is usually complaint-based and an education-first approach. We do usually issue tickets immediately and proactively for parking impeding a sidewalk, handicap accessible violations, and fire hydrant distance. When we receive calls for service, the complaints are filtered into each code enforcement officer's assigned response area and addressed based on availability and the geographic location of our caseload. These parking complaints would be reactive to the complaint, and by the time of our response, the vehicle would have been parked for a decent amount of time, validating a violation. The complaint could be handled through Ada County Dispatch and assigned to a patrol officer or community service officer, and the call would be dispatched based on its lower priority level. Our goal with this provision prohibiting parking in front of a mailbox will be to educate the violator with a parking warning notice or verbally if we're able to contact the driver and have the vehicle moved. If we respond to a repeated call for service regarding the same vehicle or violator, a citation will be issued. If desired, we could utilize public information officers and our social media to help educate the community in a bigger spectrum that would also increase the call load. Other concerns that I've heard addressed were the distance, 10 feet from the mailbox. The distance was chosen based on other cities' current codes that are in effect, with consideration of the average size delivery vehicle and their ability to drive in and out of the delivery area. There is a chance this may eliminate some off-street parking, on-street parking currently available, especially in courts or circles. In regards to the courts and circles, we already find many people are parking in violation of the current regulations by parking perpendicular into the roadway and utilizing a space that really isn't a parking spot at all. A second discussion topic was delivering to a community box that allows parking in front of the central delivery location. Parking in front of those community type mail receptacles does not prevent delivery because they are backloaded by a mail carrier that already has to exit their vehicle. The words freestanding mailbox could be added to our regulation if it was a great concern. Another discussion was the allowance of parking in front of your own mailbox. I would not recommend that the ordinance include this exception for parking in front of your own mailbox would majorly inadvertently block your neighbor's box. It could also create enforcement issues for vehicles that are not currently registered to the address location that we're out on, and they may claim residency. With that information being presented, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Lacey. Appreciate that information very much. Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Pearl.
Lacey, thank you so much. Just a couple of questions for you. I was going to ask a question about the 10 feet and how that came to be, because it seems to me that 10 feet on either side of a freestanding mailbox is quite a bit of space. We regularly hear applications in which we have freestanding mailboxes that are on private streets in a neighborhood, and with townhomes and other lots that are very narrow, there isn't sometimes even 10 feet between the mailboxes. And part of what we often approve or what we get requested to do is to allow for a certain amount of on-street parking for visitors. And it's a frequent part of our conversation. And we do approve applications where on-street parking is allowed, and there's an expectation that visitors would use the on-street parking. And this typically happens in the same neighborhoods where the mailboxes are close together. So do you have any suggestions, recommendations for us as council as we hear these applications in the future to be looking out for that? And also, is there a way for a resident to sort of appeal if there really truly is no other place for them to park in a particular neighborhood?
In response to the private lanes, which is sounding like that's where that's normally occurring, private streets wouldn't be enforceable. So private lanes are, the only things that we can enforce on private lanes are fire lanes and handicap marked spots. So it wouldn't be on private lanes if they're the narrow lanes that probably are under the width requirements for parking anyway, or if they're just within a subdivision or something that's designed with private lanes, we wouldn't be enforcing on those.
Mr. Mayor.
1 second, Councilwoman Schrader. Did you have more to add to our second question?
I didn't, the rest of it I think would be up.
Okay, great. Councilwoman Schrader.
Thanks for the follow-up on what the other cities are doing. I think it's important that everyone gets their mail 100%. The medication example is a great example. I think some kind of a regulation makes sense. I am also struggling with the 10 feet, why we chose 10 feet. Is it just for that clarity of a bright line of when someone's in violation that we would prefer the 10 feet versus like the Caldwell approach, which is, pretty straightforward. If it is parked in a way that prevents the distribution of mail, you're in violation, and maybe that would allow us to use more judgment. Or how did we, maybe give me some flavor for how you chose the form of the strictly 10 feet versus a more general statement.
So an average delivery truck is 14.5 feet. So it needs to have space to go in and out of the location. I did look up the driving training records for mail postal carriers, and they basically say that a mailbox is blocked if it's actually less than 15 feet. That's how they train them for like evasive driving, is if it's anything closer than 15 feet. And then yes, the number, assigning it a number makes it more enforceable, one for us and one for the code, for if we ended up in court. So if someone contested it and we were able to document that they were within that 10 feet, that gives a more direct wrong or right than if I would say it was blocked, because it may just be blocked to me because I'm a bad driver.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
Thanks, Lacey. That's really helpful. I think with the information, which maybe I'm spatially challenged, but not realizing that a delivery truck is 14.5 feet, it's starting to make more sense to me. So, so I think I'm feeling better about the approach. I do think we could have some challenges, maybe some unintended consequences with our townhomes. I don't know, maybe we should think that through a bit, or maybe I guess I would be curious if you had any input from the community development, like the planning department, if they were overly concerned about this and how that might affect us.
And maybe if I could, because Mr. Mayor, I know that in a lot of places, the new places I've seen, they've gone to a consolidated delivery point. New places don't have a lot. And I even go back to my subdivision where we have consolidated for townhomes on private lanes, and we have mailboxes in front of single family homes. Does our code contemplate that? And maybe this is a question for someone in community development, but is there any sort of standards that people expect?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm not totally certain. I do know there are design standards that require certain things. I was going to answer also part of the 10-foot question. That's the same distance we require you park away from the garbage can. So that's another reason for that measurement. So we use the same measurement for that. But whether or not planning has a requirement, I don't know that. So that might be another question to planning, because we probably do need to at least have them, look at this and see, will this affect any of their reviews? Because as Councilmember Perot mentioned, the council doesn't have to look for mailboxes. They have plenty of other things to do. But certainly that is part of the review process as those things get looked at, because they get looked at by police, they get looked at by the public services, they get looked at by a variety of different folks for a variety of reasons like that. But that one, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer specifically.
Yeah, my understanding is the Postal Service is trying to push everyone towards a centralized delivery location because they don't have the resources to drive to everybody's home.
Right.
But I don't know how that's being applied or not.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
maybe a question for Mr. Neri. Bill, if this were to come back to us, would this be housed in Title VII, or would it fall under Title 11 within the UDC?
So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Cavanagh, I think our intention was to put it in Title VII because it's a police regulation and that's where the other parking regulations are, rather than a standard in the Uniform Development Code. And like I said, I will probably have to have planning weigh in, but that, of course, is a more attenuated process because you got to go through the P&Z Commission first and then to council. But I don't think it makes as much sense in the parking code or in the UDC as it does in the police code.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
I think the reason for my question is I appreciate what's trying to be addressed here. The 10-foot length is, I think, will bring with it some unintended consequences, particularly in some of the developments that we've approved over the past few years. We've made decisions based on the amount of public parking that we're going to lose. And I know that councils, the past few years, we've really been we've weighed in a lot on the amount of on-street parking. And so shrinking from 10 foot to maybe a smaller amount is probably something I would be more supportive of. But I also wonder if it makes sense in all of our zoning categories. So clearly we have like an R2 or R4, even in R8, I think that may make sense. But in a higher density development, maybe more of those more often than not have these, mail units as opposed to a freestanding mailbox. But I worry again about, we see this play out at town halls, and I'm sure the mayor's office gets a lot of this, that neighbors fight with neighbors, and you see this on a daily basis. They will use every tool in their toolbox to mess with their neighbor. And we don't want, apartment folk, somebody's living in an apartment calling on their neighbor because they're parked out front in a parking spot where the mailbox is. I know I touched on that when we talked 2 weeks ago. The piece about freestanding mailbox, I think maybe helps that, but I'm also still not completely sold. So those are just some of my thoughts, is that maybe this is better housed in the UDC. I don't know, Mr. Neri, if it was in the Unified Development Code, if that would impact private lanes at that point or not.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Cameron, the enforcement authority still is with code enforcement, so they don't have authority to enforce it.
Okay.
Mr. Neri, could you speak up?
Certainly, the enforcement authority here is right now housed with code enforcement is the intent, or the community service officers. So we don't have authority to enforce on a private street.
And at least just, again, a reminder of certain elements. Most parking problems come in the evenings, not during the day when cars are typically vacated from areas. It is complaint driven. So someone would have to, in theory, not have their mail delivered. And you know, typically, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Postal Service will actually put something on someone's car if it's blocking a mailbox and notify them why they did not get it. So I think there's multiple steps that would have to occur before it would get to a code-driven solution. And you know, like I say, parking problems are typically when everyone's back from their day. Not to say it wouldn't happen, but it is more designed for those day things. But parking is going to become a bigger issue in certain elements besides just mailboxes here in Meridian, especially here in downtown. As we move forward. And in downtown, you actually have the combination of various entrance points that are sometimes the entire length of the property, along with the mailbox, along with things. But I think some of their mailboxes are on their houses still, and they're not even freestanding. So maybe that's, I don't know, but it's a great conversation. Councilman Burnt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the discussion. Thank you for the presentation. I don't have any issues personally with this new code, or I think it makes sense. People shouldn't be parking in front of mailboxes. I mean, honestly, it's just as simple as that. I think it was stated a couple weeks ago when we talked that most thought that this was already something that we looked at, and since it's not, it's something that we need to. I don't think it's going to be a huge issue, and I think most people understand that they shouldn't be parking in front of mailboxes, and so and when they do, they should move their cars. So,
In my opinion, well put. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
Yeah, I think I think just looking at it holistically, important for people to get their mail. The one piece I would say, sort of to Councilman Kavanaugh's point, I think if we were to do this, if there was some follow-up in planning, it would be appropriate to make sure we're not counting parking in future approvals of developments that we really shouldn't be counting, I guess would be maybe some follow-up I would hope to see, because I wouldn't want to be giving people credit for parking that really isn't usable.
Mr. Mayor.
Just to follow up to that, kind of back to my point, is it not you, if it only applies 8 to 5, does that matter in your parking? Do we feel like there's an 8 to 5 parking problem in most of these areas where this would apply? And I just have to have an answer, but again, that's what the ordinance talks about, because that's when the mail is going to be delivered, not at all times. So how should that be applied or not? Councilman Burnt.
Thank you. I think it's important to look, maybe follow up with planning just to make sure and verify that that's not going to hurt anything. I'd be surprised if they count parking spaces in front of mailboxes. I'd be pretty surprised if that's the case. If it's going to give council members less heartburn and to just verify that that's the case, I think that send out an email and with verification. I don't think we need to schedule any more time in regard to this on a council agenda, but quick email from whoever in planning can just verify that that's the case, that's the way we've always done it, I think would suffice.
Yeah, my intention was to ask staff to at least address how mailboxes are currently. I mean, it doesn't, how they are looked at moving forward.
Sure.
From are they grouped? Are they individual? What is that process? Who makes that determination? Obviously, wouldn't, I don't know that they would want to go back and look at the approvals of the last 5 years and what that would be, but at least moving forward, what that would look like.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Pro.
to your point about whether we really have an issue 8 to 5, since people have started working from home, I've seen a significant increase in cars on the street in the neighborhoods, in my neighborhood and whatnot during the daytime. So I do think that if they're, if people are going to continue to work from home, which we don't know at this point yet, I do think it's something that should, we should still take into account, even though that may not be the busiest traffic time of the day. There's still a lot more people parking at home than there used to be during the day.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
just real quick, I agree with Councilman Burt's assessment. 10-foot fine, we have to have some enforcement to it. Let's just get a update from community development, and then once that we have that understanding, we can move forward with this ordinance.
Okay. Well, what we'll plan on doing is we'll get that update. Council President and I will discuss about whether or not to bring this back and how, in terms of an ordinance for further consideration. I think there's at least 3 that I can easily say are in favor, unless Council President or Councilman Borton has changed his mind, but I can't imagine so. So at least I would envision this moving forward for further process, discussion, and implementation.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burnt.
saying you might have to vote on this one?
I don't think so. I think when people see it, they'll, but I'd be happy to if I need to. So, right. Thank you, Lacey. Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is ordinance number 20-1919. I'll ask the clerk to read this ordinance by title.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an ordinance related to H 2020-0101 Daphne Square subdivision for annexation of a portion of the southwest 1/4 of the southwest 1/4 of section 27, Township 4 North, Range 1 West, Boise Meridian, Ada County, Idaho, and being more particularly described in attachment A and annexing certain lands and territory situated in Ada County, Idaho, and adjacent and contiguous to the corporate limits of the city of Meridian as requested by the city of Meridian. Establishing and determining the land use zoning classification of 4.97 acres of land from RUT to R15, medium high density residential zoning district in the Meridian City Code. Providing that copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, and providing for a summary of the ordinance and providing for a waiver of the reading rules and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Council, you've heard this ordinance read by title. Would anybody like it read in its entirety? If not, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Pro.
I move that we approve ordinance number 21-1919 with the suspension of rules.
Second.
Motion.
I have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The ordinance is agreed to. Anything under future meeting topics? If not, item 25, executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the mayor and city council go into executive session per Idaho Code 74-2061A.
Second the motion.
I have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Perot.
Aye.
Strader.
Aye.
Hoagland.
Aye.
Burnt.
Aye.
All ayes, and we will move into executive session.